Simplest form is the specific equivalent fraction whose numerator and denominator cannot be divided by any number other than 1. In the previous lesson, we talked about how you can make equivalent fractions by multiplying the numerator and the denominator by the same number, and also how you could divide each of those by the same number. So, one slide I multiplied and got an equivalent fraction, and another slide I actually divided and got an equivalent fraction. So that's the type of thing you're doing when we do simplest form. On these, we're not going to have a whole bunch of pictures. However, we'll have those fractions. We'll be doing all that multiplying, or sorry, in this case, dividing to get down to simplest form. And once we get to a spot where we can't take the numerator and denominator and divide by any other number than 1, we've arrived at simplest form. So it says write the fraction in simplest form. It's 6/8. So we have to find the number that we can divide by the numerator and the denominator and get an equivalent fraction. So I look at the numbers that 6 has as factors. I've got 1 and 6. That's a way to make 6. 2 times 3. That's a way to make 6. Now there are no other ways to make 6. So then I start thinking about the ways I can make 8. 1 and 8 gives me 8. 2 and 4 give me 8. And I start looking at numbers that will work for both of them. Like I think of 6. That works well for 6, but I don't see it anywhere on the 8 list down here. 3 works well for 6, but again, I don't see it anywhere down here on the 8 list. I look here, I see 4 down on the 8 list, but not up on the 6. So I'm looking for what's called a common factor, one that can be divided by both of them. So I've got one right here, and I've got another one right here. So again, I'm looking for something I can divide by other than 1. So if I take the numerator and the denominator, divide by this common factor 2, I get the number 3 on top and the number 4 on the bottom. So it's an equivalent fraction. 6/8 is equal to 3/4. They are equivalent fractions. And now I look at 3 and 4. I really don't have any other factors. Look at the way I can make 3. It's only 1 times 3. It's called a prime number. Look at 4. I can make it only by 1 times 4 and 2 times 2. So I don't see any common factors here except for the number 1. So I have arrived at simplest form. 3/4 is simplest form. Okay. All right, this next one, looking at 12/15, the ways I can make 12. I've got 1 and 12. I've got 2 and 6. I've got 3 and 4. These are called factor pairs. 1 times 12. That's a pair. So it's like a pair of shoes where you have a left foot and a right foot. This is the left foot 1. This is the right foot 12. It's called a factor pair. 2 and 6. Again, a pair. And 3 and 4. I go down to 15 and think of the ways I can make 15. I got 1 times 15. 2. 2 doesn't help us make 15. 2 is goes into even numbers. Helps us make even numbers, and 15 is an odd number. 3 times 5. Again, 4 makes even numbers, but not odd numbers. And then 5 is what I would call on the other side. You've got working your way, you're making factors, you're making factor pairs. 1 is on one side of the line, 1 is on the other. 1 is on one side, 1 is on the other. The next one that I would have checked would have been 5, but 5 is already on the other side of the line. So I know that I found all my factors. So I look at the factors now and try and find some that are common, ones that are on both lists. And I work my way down. I don't see any common factors until I get to 3 right here. All right. So I divide numerator and denominator by 3. I'm I get 12 divided by 3, which is 4. And 15 divided by 3, which is 5. Alright, again, I take a look here. I get 1 and 4, 2 and 2. That's how I make 4. Those are factor pairs for 4. 1 and 5 are the only factors for 5. And you can see 1 and 1, those are common factors, but I'm looking for something else besides 1. There's nothing else here. So 4/5 would be my simplest form for the fraction 12/15. All right, 24/30 is our next one. Now, there's lots of ways to make 24, so I start thinking about 1, 24, 2 and 12, 3 and 8, and 4 and 6. That line kind of goes right down between these here. 3, 8, 4, and 6. 1 and 30, 2 and 15, 3 and 10, 2 and 15, 3 and 10, and 5 and 6. All right, so I start looking at common factors: 24, 30, 15, 12, 10, 8, 6. See 6 on both lists. I got a 6 right there. I got a 6 right here. 5, 3, 2, 1. So the common factors, the ones that are on both lists, we got 1, 2, 3, and 6. So if I was to divide by a common factor, 3 for instance, 3 in the numerator, 3 in the denominator, I would get 24 divided by 3, which is 8, 30 divided by 3, which is 10. Now I look at my common factors here. These are the ways to make 8. 1 times 8, 2 times 4. Here I've got 1 times 10, 2 times 5. I could check 3. 3 times 3 is 9, and 3 times 4 is 12. So nothing times 3 gives us 10. 4 I could check. 4 times 2 gives me 8, and 4 times 3 gives me 12. And the next one I would have checked would have been 5, but like I said before, I've made it to the other side. 5 is already on my list. I've made it to numbers that are listed on the other side of the line, and I know that I have completely found all of the factors then. I see a common factor 2 here, so I would take 8/10 divided by 2 on the numerator and 2 on the denominator, end up with 4/5. It's simplest form. It's the equivalent fraction here, and of course this is an equivalent fraction. All of these are equivalent to each other. But this one right here is a simplest form. It's a specific equivalent fraction that you can't take the numerator and denominator and divide by any other number besides 1. All right, so you can see it took me 2 different steps. First I divided by 3, and then I divided by 2. And so if we'd like to be able to get from 24/30 right to simplest form with one step, you would have to divide by what's called the greatest common factor. And in this case, the greatest common factor, the largest one, was 6. Okay. If you take a fraction, divide by the greatest common factor, the biggest one you can find in the numerator and the denominator, you are going to get simplest form right away. So I would have gotten 24 divided by 6 to get 4, 30 divided by 6 to get 5. I would have gotten right to the simplest form right away. And that's the way it always works. If you divide the numerator and denominator by the greatest common factor, you will get simplest form right away. If you don't divide by the greatest common factor, like I didn't, it's going to take a couple steps. You might have to divide by 3/3, and then after you're done with that, you got to divide by 2/2 again, so you get all the way down to simplest form. All right, So this is how you find factors and common factors, and then simplest form uh, with fractions.